Have you ever gotten completely lost in a novel, feeling your heart race when the main character is in danger or maybe even tearing up at a powerful ending?
Yeah, for sure.
Today we're going to deep dive into the science of why fiction can affect us so powerfully.
Okay.
It's not just that we enjoy a good story.
Right.
We're going to look at how it actually impacts our brains and emotions.
Interesting.
You gave me some really amazing research articles on this.
Oh, cool.
And honestly, some of the findings were mind-blowing. So today, our goal is to break down not just why we love stories,
Okay.
but how they affect us
Yeah.
on a neurological and psychological level.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
I think it is. What's really cool is that, fiction's impact goes way beyond just entertainment.
Okay.
There's a whole bunch of research showing how it actually shapes our ability to empathize with other people.
Wow.
It's actually pretty profound.
So it's more than just a fun way to pass the time.
It is.
It's actually changing us.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, okay.
So let's start with what actually happens in our brains
Yeah.
when we become truly immersed in a story.
Okay, yeah, let's start there.
So researchers, they use this term narrative transportation
Mhm.
to describe this.
Narrative transportation.
Yeah, and it basically means that our brains react as if the fictional events are really happening to us.
Oh, wow. So even though I know, logically that it's not real,
Right.
my brain is still reacting as though I'm experiencing it firsthand.
Exactly, exactly. One study found that when people are reading about a character who is running,
Okay.
the same brain regions light up as if they were running themselves.
Really?
It's like our brains create this virtual reality simulation
Oh,
of
wow.
the story.
That makes those marathon reading sessions make a lot more sense, when you just can't put the book down.
Oh, totally.
But it's not just physical sensations, right?
Right.
We also connect with characters on an emotional level.
Absolutely.
So how does that work?
That's where mental simulation comes into play. So fiction lets us experience stuff we might never encounter in real life,
Okay. Yeah.
like crazy social situations or exploring new places.
Oh, interesting. So it's almost like a test drive for life. We get to see how we would react in those situations without any real world consequences.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And as we're doing this mental simulation,
Yeah.
our brains are actually making new connections, especially in a region called the default mode network.
The what?
Default mode network. It's this area of the brain that's really involved in self-reflection,
Okay.
social understanding, and empathy.
Okay. So the more we read, the more we're strengthening these parts of our brains.
Exactly.
Wow. So does that mean reading fiction can actually make us more empathetic people?
That's actually one of the most amazing things that the research has shown.
Really?
Yeah. Reading is like a workout for our empathy muscles. When we step into a character's shoes, we're actually practicing perspective taking. We're seeing things from a point of view that might be totally different from our own.
That makes a lot of sense.
There's this one study, and they found that people who read literary fiction, which usually has complex characters and relationships,
Yeah.
they actually showed a greater ability to empathize
Really?
than those who read nonfiction.
Okay, that's fascinating. It's not just about feeling bad for a character.
Right.
It's about understanding why they do what they do,
Right, exactly.
what they're afraid of, what they dream of. It's gaining access to their inner world.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And this deeper understanding can actually carry over into our real lives. It can make us more sensitive to other people's emotions and more likely to be compassionate in how we act.
That's incredible. So even trying to solve a mystery novel or figure out a character's moral dilemma is actually training my brain to understand other people better.
Exactly. It's helping us learn to navigate those messy real-life relationships.
Wow. And it's not just about understanding others, right? You mentioned earlier that fiction also has some cool effects on our own well-being.
Yeah. So studies have shown that reading fiction can be super effective for reducing stress, even more than other relaxation techniques.
Oh, wow. Really? More than meditation or taking a bath.
Yeah. One study even found that just 6 minutes of reading led to a significant decrease in stress levels.
6 minutes. That's amazing.
Like a whopping 68% reduction.
68%. Wow. That's less time than it takes me to scroll through social media.
Right.
But how does that work? Is it just about escaping reality for a bit, or is there something more going on?
It's definitely more nuanced than just escaping.
Okay.
Remember those feel-good brain chemicals we talked about before?
Yeah.
Well, when we get absorbed in a story, our brains release dopamine, which is associated with pleasure and reward.
So it's like our brains are rewarding us for reading.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
feels good, so we want to do more of it.
Makes sense. What about that deep connection we feel with characters, even fictional ones? Is there a chemical reason for that too?
There might be. Some research suggests that when we connect with characters, it can trigger the release of oxytocin.
Oxytocin, the love hormone.
Yep. The same one that's released when we hug someone or spend time with close friends.
So, like, our brains don't totally separate fictional relationships from real ones, at least on a chemical level. That's wild. But why are we wired to connect with stories this deeply in the first place? It feels like it's just a part of being human.
It's a great question, and it takes us back to our evolutionary roots. For early humans, storytelling wasn't just for fun.
Right.
It was actually crucial for survival.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this evolutionary perspective.
Well, back then, stories were a way to pass down important knowledge, teach social norms, warn about dangers, and build a sense of community.
Oh, that's really interesting. So it helped them make sense of the world around them and connect with each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to think that those primal instincts are still so relevant today. We're still drawn to stories for the same reasons,
Mm,
to learn, connect, and make sense of our world.
that's fascinating.
And don't forget about how stories let us safely explore challenging or even dangerous situations.
It's true. I love a good thriller, but I definitely wouldn't want to live through one in real life.
Exactly. It's like a dress rehearsal for life.
Yeah,
Right.
it lets us learn and grow without facing real world risks.
Exactly.
It's like conquering a dragon from the comfort of my couch.
But speaking of real world implications, what does all this amazing research actually mean for us practically?
Well, that's where it gets really exciting. This research has big implications for stuff like education, mental health, and even just personal growth.
Wow. Okay. I'm ready to hear more about this.
For example, there's a big push right now to include more fiction in education
Oh, interesting.
because we're starting to see how much potential it has to improve literacy, critical thinking skills, and emotional intelligence in students. Yeah, it seems like giving students those skills through engaging stories could be incredibly beneficial.
It could be huge. And then beyond school, there's actually a whole field called bibliotherapy, which uses books for therapeutic purposes.
Wow, I've never heard of that.
It can be incredibly helpful for people who are trying to process difficult emotions or experiences.
So the power of stories really is multifaceted. It's not just about entertainment, it's about understanding ourselves and the world, connecting with others, and even promoting healing.
It really is. And honestly, we've only just scratched the surface of understanding how deeply fiction influences us.
Wow. It's amazing to think that something as simple as reading can have such a huge impact on our brains and like our well-being overall.
Totally. And we've only just started to understand it, really. There's so much more to this connection between fiction and being human.
Yeah, that's what's so exciting about this topic. But before we get too deep into that, I wanted to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the idea that fiction can be a tool for social change. That's a really powerful thought. How do you see that working in the real world?
Well, think about it. We've seen how reading fiction can make us more empathetic and help us understand different points of view. So it makes sense that it could also help break down prejudices and encourage tolerance, right?
So you're saying a good story could actually help bridge the gaps between people from different backgrounds, cultures, or beliefs.
It's definitely possible. When we immerse ourselves in stories about characters and experiences that are outside of our own little bubbles, it can challenge our assumptions and help us see the world in a more nuanced way.
One of the articles you shared talked about cultural competence, which is like the ability to connect with people from different cultures effectively. Do you have any examples of how fiction can help develop that skill?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine reading a novel set in a country you've never been to, a story that really brings to life the daily routines, traditions, and values of the characters. It's like taking a virtual trip to another culture and getting insights you wouldn't find in a typical travel guide.
So it's not just about learning facts, but about connecting with the human stories behind those facts.
Exactly. And those stories can break down barriers and build understanding between people from different places. Fiction can be a powerful antidote to the problem of the single story, where we have limited and often inaccurate views of others because we don't have the full picture.
I love that idea of fiction being like a bridge between cultures.
Yeah.
But let's shift back to the individual level for a second. Besides reducing stress and making us more empathetic, are there other ways reading fiction can benefit us personally?
Definitely. Reading fiction can be a great way to keep our minds sharp and healthy as we age.
It's like the saying, use it or lose it, right?
That's exactly it. Reading regularly gives your brain a workout, and that helps keep it agile and functioning well. It's like taking your brain to the gym.
Speaking of gyms, I know a lot of people find reading super relaxing, a perfect way to unwind after a busy day.
But for sure, getting lost in a good story gives you a break from everyday stress. It allows you to disconnect from your worries and recharge.
It's like hitting the pause button on the world for a little while.
And that pause can be really restorative. You know, it helps us step back, gain perspective, and come back to our lives feeling refreshed.
I know I sleep so much better when I read before bed. It seems to calm my mind and get me ready for a good night's rest.
That makes sense. There's actual research showing that reading can help quiet your mind and ease you into sleep. But it's not just about relaxation, is it? Reading fiction can also be super stimulating and make you think.
I love those moments when a book introduces me to a completely new idea or helps me see the world in a different way.
Those aha moments are what make reading so transformative. They open up our minds and enrich our understanding of ourselves and the world. It's not just about escaping reality, it's about engaging with it on a deeper, more meaningful level.
It's like fiction gives us a toolkit for dealing with the complexities of life.
It's a powerful reminder of the importance of stories and the limitless possibilities of human imagination.
So we've talked about the science behind why we love fiction, how it can make a difference in the world, and how it can enrich our lives. But I'm wondering, is there a dark side to fiction? Are there any potential downsides we should be aware of?
That's a really thoughtful question. What I'm definitely a believer in the power of stories. It's important to remember that like any powerful tool, there can be downsides if we're not careful.
I'm curious to hear more about this dark side. What are some things to watch out for?
One potential pitfall is getting so caught up in a fictional world that we lose touch with reality. It's great to get lost in a good story, but it's important to keep a balance and make sure our love for fiction doesn't take over our real-life responsibilities and relationships.
It's all about moderation, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Another potential downside is that sometimes, even unintentionally, fiction can reinforce negative stereotypes or harmful beliefs.
That's a tricky one. Can you explain that a little more?
Sure. If a story presents a biased or inaccurate view of a particular group of people, it can strengthen harmful stereotypes and contribute to prejudice, even if that wasn't the author's intention. Think about how some cultures or demographics have been misrepresented in books or movies throughout history. These portrayals can have a lasting effect on how we perceive and interact with those groups in real life.
So it's really important to be thoughtful readers, to think critically about what we're reading, and to be aware of the messages a story is sending, both directly and indirectly.
Couldn't agree more. We should always approach fiction with a critical eye, questioning the perspectives and values being presented, and considering how those stories might affect us personally and the world as a whole.
Those critical thinking skills we develop through reading can be so valuable in navigating these complexities.
Absolutely. We can use those skills to analyze the stories we read and think about how they might be influencing our own beliefs and the broader social landscape.
So it's not just about passively taking in the words on the page, but actively engaging with them and thinking critically about their message.
That's what makes reading so rewarding and enriching. It's a dynamic back and forth between the author's words and the reader's interpretation, a collaborative process that happens in our imaginations.
It's amazing to think that we, as readers, play such an active role in shaping the meaning and impact of a story.
We really do. The reader isn't just a passive recipient. They're an active participant, bringing their own unique experiences, beliefs, and perspectives to the table.
So each reader will experience a story in their own unique way.
Exactly. The meaning we take away from a story is shaped by our own individual lens, which makes each reading experience personal and multifaceted.
It's like each reader is co-creating the story along with the author.
In a way, yes. The author sets the stage, but the reader brings it to life, adding their own interpretations and emotional responses.
This really highlights the power and responsibility we have as readers. We need to engage with stories thoughtfully, critically, and with an awareness of our own biases.
I think that's a great point. It's about being informed readers, using our critical thinking skills, and recognizing that stories can have a profound impact, both good and bad.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the science of why we love fiction, its impact on the real world, and the importance of being thoughtful and careful readers. What other insights do you think are important for our listeners to take away?
I think it's important to address some common misconceptions about fiction. One big one is that fiction is just frivolous entertainment, a way to escape from reality.
I think we've pretty much debunked that myth by now.
We definitely have. But it's worth emphasizing that fiction can be so much more than just a distraction. It's a powerful tool for exploring the human condition, tackling complex social issues, and deepening our understanding of ourselves and the world we live in.
Another misconception I hear a lot is that reading fiction is a solitary activity, something you do alone in a quiet corner.
That's a common one, but it misses the incredible value of sharing reading experiences with others. Think about all the lively discussions that happen in book clubs, the passionate communities that form around favorite authors, or even just casual conversations with friends about the books we're reading.
Those shared experiences can really enrich our understanding of a book and create a sense of connection and community around a shared love of stories.
Absolutely. It's like when a favorite book is turned into a movie or a TV show, suddenly there's this whole new community of people who share your passion for those characters in that world. It makes the impact even bigger and creates a shared experience that goes beyond just reading the book on your own.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, do you have any practical tips for our listeners on how to incorporate more fiction into their lives in a mindful and enriching way?
I do. First and foremost, be intentional about the stories you choose. Ask yourself, what kind of experience am I looking for? What do I hope to get out of reading this?
So, if I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed, maybe I should pick up a lighthearted rom-com instead of a dark thriller.
Exactly. Pay attention to your own needs and what you enjoy, and don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone and explore new genres or authors. You might discover amazing books you never knew you'd love.
And it's okay to stop reading a book if it's just not grabbing you, right?
Absolutely. Life's too short to force yourself to finish a book that's not bringing you joy. Trust your gut and move on to something that you find captivating.
What other tips do you have?
Make time for reading, even if it's just for a few minutes each day. Even short bursts of reading can have a positive effect on your well-being.
I love that. I'm going to try carrying a book with me instead of automatically reaching for my phone when I have a few spare minutes.
That's a great idea. And last but not least, remember that reading isn't just about passively consuming words. It's about actively engaging with a text. Underline passages that resonate with you, write down your thoughts in the margins, or talk about the book with a friend.
It's about bringing those stories to life and connecting them to your understanding of yourself and the world.
Exactly. Turn reading from a passive form of entertainment into an active and enriching experience.
Yeah, it really is amazing how reading can create these like vibrant communities of people who just love sharing stories.
It is.
I'm already thinking about branching out with my reading list and maybe even like joining a book club.
Oh, it's great.
But before we get too carried away, I'm curious if there are any like lingering questions or anything we haven't really touched on yet.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think we've done a pretty good job covering the basics, from how our brains react to stories to how fiction can help us understand each other better and even create positive change in the world.
Right.
But
Yeah.
there's always more to discover, right?
Yeah.
Like more layers to peel back.
Absolutely. So, what other questions do people often have about fiction? Or what misconceptions do we need to bust?
Okay, well, one common misconception is that, like, all fiction is the same, that any book will give you the same benefits.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that before.
Right. Like, it doesn't really matter what you read as long as you're reading something.
Right. But it sounds like you're saying it's not just about reading any book.
Exactly.
It's about picking the right book
Yeah.
for your needs and your goals.
Exactly. So while I think all reading is good,
Yes.
certain types of fiction are better suited for specific benefits.
Okay, that makes sense. So, like, if I want to learn more about different cultures or time periods,
Right.
I might choose literary fiction or historical novels that really explore those worlds.
Exactly. And if you're just looking to escape and let your imagination run wild, you might go for a fantasy novel or a light romance, something like that.
Makes sense. So, the key is to be mindful of what I want to get out of my reading
Yeah,
and choose books that align with those goals.
exactly.
Whether it's learning something new, becoming more empathetic,
Yeah,
or just having fun.
totally.
It sounds like there's a whole world of literary adventures just waiting to be discovered.
There really is.
Okay, well, before we go off on our separate reading quests,
Uh-huh.
what final thoughts do you want to leave our listeners with?
Okay, well, since we've learned so much about how fiction can help us see things from different perspectives,
Yeah.
I'd encourage everyone listening to really think carefully about the books you choose.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what perspectives am I missing?
Yeah.
What stories can challenge how I see the world or introduce me to new ways of thinking?
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, by embracing a wide range of stories, we can learn so much more about ourselves,
Right.
our world, and just what it means to be human, you
Hmm.
know, in all its messiness.
Yeah, that's a powerful call to action. It's a reminder that reading isn't just a passive thing,
Right.
it's a chance to engage with the world,
Yeah.
challenge our own beliefs,
Mhm.
and expand our horizons.
Absolutely.
It's been so great exploring the world of fiction with you today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
I've learned so much. And to everyone listening, I hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity
I hope so.
and inspired you to embark on some literary adventures of your own.
Definitely.
Uh,
Happy reading, everyone.
Happy reading!